Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Kanak Karita and I welcome all of you back to this new session on the scholarly publishing and UGC care. So this particular session we're conducting for the recent trends in research methodology online workshop that has been conducted by the RSRI group. So in our last lecture or in our last session, we saw about the different kinds of indexings that is out there and how these indexings differ and what are the different kinds of citation metrics that is based on these different kinds of uh, indexings are there. And we also looked at a new phenomena, or rather a phenomena that has plagued the scientific community since the last decade, that is the phenomenon of the dubious journals and the predatory journals. So in that regard, the UGC, which is the basically the uh, topmost and the foremost organization of higher education in India, they also felt that some steps should be taken to address this particular issue, which is hampering the science as a whole and the Indian image in general. So let us first learn what basically is the UGC or the University Grants Commission. So the UGC is a organization that was set up way back in 1953 in the independent India, and its main task is to regulate all the higher education bodies that are there in India. So basically it acts as a supervisory kind of organization which is directly controlled by the government of India or which is directly under the government of India as per the UGC Act of 1956, and it regulates the different kinds of fund allotment, different kinds of activities starting from the fund allotment to the policy making that goes into the higher education in India. So we all know that the UGC has its headquarters in New Delhi, and you also probably know that the UGC divides the entire Indian educational scenario in terms of six regions, and there are six centers which basically looks after the activity in this particular regions, and these six centers are generally are in the different geographic locations, which are Pune, Bhopal, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Guwahati, and Bangalore. So let us look at what is UGC care. It is a term that has become very famous among the Indian researchers as such lately, and people are very concerned, and researchers are very concerned to know whether their particular paper or their particular article that they have published in a particular journal that is indexed in the UGC care or not. Okay. So in this session, we'll try to look at this broader aspect of what is UGC care, why it is needed, and how it is going to help you understand that where you need to publish and where you need not publish. Okay. So in that regards, the UGC care, the full form for the UGC care is University Grants Commission, Consortium for Academic and Research Ethics. So as you see in the name itself, they have used the word consortium. So the word basically consortium means that it is a group of members, or it is a group as such. So basically, the UGC was plagued by the issue of dubious journals or dubious kind of articles that were coming from India. Uh, in a latest study, in a recent study, I think that study was published some 3-4 years back, and it was published in one of the top journals called the Nature. So there it was found that around 51% of the publications that were in that particular year of study, the 51% of the world's predatory journals were based in India. Okay? That was a very kind of negative feedback for the country, because it seems that the entire academic scenario here is very grim, and everyone here is involved in this kind of dubious publishing or predatory publishing measures. So there was another study which found out that the number of the papers that are published by the different organizations. There was a study which was recently published in one of the top journals from India, that is the Current Science. So the Current Science, in one of the articles that was published in Current Science, it was found that they categorize all the institutions that are there in India in terms of the premier institutes, then the central institutes, then the state institutes, and then the private institutes. So they found that around 78% of the articles or 78% of the papers that were published by the private education institutes in India were found to be in predatory journals. And the best performing group among them were the premier institutes, because mainly in the premier institutes they conducted this survey only for institutes like IITs and NITs and ISC Bangalore and IIMs and all that. So in that they found that only around 5% of the journals and only around 5% of the articles that had the name of these premier institutes in them in kind of author list were published in predatory journals. So that itself was also, though it was only 5%, but that itself was also a very worrying cause for the UGC, because it shows that that even the most famous institutes or the most premier institutes in the India, researchers from the most premier institutes in India are also not immune to this kind of false propaganda or this kind of fake journals, right? So it was a very it was a matter of prestige for the country as well as for the UGC, which was actually controlling the, or which is responsible for the education scenario in India. So based on this kind of faced with this kind of challenges, the UGC came up with this idea of making something called the UGC Care. Again, I should give you a little history and little context about the UGC Care. Is the fact that I think in around 2015, I might be wrong, that it's around 2015, 14 or 16, somewhere around this time, UGC came up with a list called the UGC approved list of journals. So the idea of the UGC approved list of journals was that the intention was very good on UGC's part, but the implementation was very poor. Means this is my personal opinion. So what UGC did during that time was that initially what they said was that they asked all the institutes that are affiliated to the UGC to submit their recommendations for different kinds of journals that can be considered as good journals. So without much checking by the UGC, what they did was that they indexed, or they not basically indexed, that was only a listing. So what UGC did was that they created a list called the UGC approved list of journals, and in that somewhere around 5,000 journals were placed, and all these 5,000 journals were directly placed in that particular list based on the recommendations of the institutes from all over India. So in those recommendations, there were institutes like IITs and NITs, the government institutes, and there were also institutes, the private institutes were also there. So obviously what happened was that a lot of this kind of bogus journals or the predatory journals that I mentioned in my last lecture also got their way into the UGC approved list. And following that, there was an article published by a researcher in India in the Current Science, where it criticized not just criticized the UGC approved list, but it also showed some evidence in terms of why these are fake and what are the measures that, in what particular ways the UGC list of approved journals has failed to meet its objective. So UGC again, because the UGC, before that you have to understand that, for example, when even if you go to the UGC website now, you will see that UGC now refers to a lot of organizations like the COPE and the DORA and all these organizations, but you have to understand that COPE started around 20 years back, around 15 years back, whereas DORA started around 20 years back. So DORA is an organization from US, and COPE is a organization that is mainly based in the UK and the European Union. So you have to think in that way, you have to see in that way that organizations like DORA or organizations like signatories like DORA or the signatories like COPE were at least 20 years ahead of the UGC in this kind of a fight against the predatory journals. So UGC of course was a little late. So but it started rectifying this after all the criticism it faced from the different sections of the researchers, as well as articles become they started coming out in the national media, also in the national print media, as well as in some television channels also. So after that, what UGC did was that UGC had a task force. UGC established a task force, and subsequently in the next 2 to 3 months, around 3,000 journals were delisted from the UGC approved list of journals. But then also it raised a serious concern among the UGC officials also, among the UGC top officials also, that this methodology cannot be applied, because if this methodology is applied, there it is subjected to some kind of abuse by the system, right? So then the case of the UGC Care came in. So basically, the UGC Care, you can think of UGC Care as a group of like-minded organizations which came together to form a white list. Okay, so why I say that this is a white list? This is a white list because the articles that the journals that are listed in this particular list are deemed safe by the UGC to publish in. So that is why this is a white list. So generally there are certain organizations which publish something called the blacklist, where they say that you need not publish in these journals. But UGC did the opposite of that, in a more, I would say, in a more uh, in a more good sense, in the sense that they published a white list. So this white list is basically a quality mandate that the UGC takes care of. So the this list can be seen here. I will show you all the details about this list. This is the particular website, uccare.unipune.ac.in. So we'll go to this website and we'll see the different kinds of information that is listed out in that website. But let me give you a brief introduction about the different kinds of objective that the UGC Care has. So the basic objective of the UGC Care was that it wanted to promote quality research in India, and it wanted to promote the publication ethics that was lacking in the Indian system. Okay. The other main fact was that if you see from the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a tremendous push in the Indian education system to go for international rankings. If you think about 6 years back, there was not so much push in the Indian system to go for international rankings. We didn't heard institutes like even the ISC or the IITs going for international ranking, quality international rankings like the QS ranking or the THE rankings. But now you see that every other organization is going for the international ranking, is applying for the international ranking, and they are producing all kinds of documents. They are giving all kinds of, they are taking all kinds of measures, all kinds of good measures to improve their ranking. Even the private organizations are doing that. So so with this kind of impetus on the ranking of the institutes, it was obvious that the institutes had to improve their publication performance. Because if you look at any of the rankings, any of the quality rankings like the QS ranking or the THE ranking, or even in our Indian system, the NIRF ranking, that is the National Institution Ranking Framework System. So in all these systems or in all these rankings, you see that there is a sufficient amount of marks or sufficient amount of points that is allotted for publication and research. Okay, so and in the publication, and I myself has been involved in the NIRF documenting process for my own institute. So I know that in the NIRF process, you have to give, or you can cite only journals, or you can put only those journals which are at least published in the Scopus and which are published in the SCI. So obviously some kind of quality check is already there in the system in this kind of ranking systems. So obviously it was important for the UGC also to push the envelope, in the sense that they should ask all these affiliated colleges and affiliated institutes to publish in only this kind of reputed journals. So the next objective of the UGC Care was that they wanted to develop an approach or a methodology to identify which are the good journals. Okay, for example, the problem was that there are certain journals in from the Indian context. For example, there are certain journals like on specifically on the topics which are very India centric. For example, there are certain journals which are on yoga. There are certain journals in Indian system which are on Ayurveda. Okay, so these journals need or may not have a international a true international readership, in the sense that because the impetus of the research that is going on this particular type of work is in India only. For example, Ayurveda is something that is extensively studied in India, though in some institutes like Germany and some other institutes, there may be some small researches that may be going on, but the majority or the bulk of the research that is in this kind of topics which are very India centric or Indian origin centric, so are going on only in India. And hence what happens is that most of these journals, though they may be of very good quality, they may not have applied to international recognition systems like the Scopus or the Web of Science uh, or the Clearweight Analytics, right? So because of which they may not be in this kind of list. So it was important for the UGC to also take care of this kind of journals which are good in quality, but not necessarily they have Scopus rankings because they are India centric, and they do not meet, or they are not within the scope of the uh, SCI database, or suppose say the Scopus database. And it was also important for the UGC to find out all the priority journals or all the dubious journals or substandard journals that were there in the Indian system or the Indian academia that were hampering the image of the Indian academia. And finally, the final or the main, I would rather say, this was the main objective of the UGC Care. They wanted to come up with a list which they initially named as the UGC Care reference list of quality journals. And later, now we call it as the UGC Care list. Initially, it was called as the UGC Care reference list of quality journals. So what was the need for this list? The need for this list was that the credibility of the research publication, it represents the image of the institute, as I told you, because it will go for different kinds of rankings, and in a broader sense it also represents the academic image of the nation. For example, if you look at a country like China, which generally by our own perception we may not rank the education system there as very high, but if you see the top 100 universities in the QS ranking, you will find at least 25 of them are from the Chinese, are of Chinese institutes. Whereas if you look at Indian institutes in the QS overall ranking I am talking about, so you may not find even one institute in the top 100 from India. You may find a couple of institutes in the engineering and maybe in the social sciences, but overall in the institution ranking you may not find uh, at present. I am not aware of. I think the best rank that we had last time was somewhere around 120ish for ISC Bangalore. So in institute ranking from the QS. So you see that whereas countries like China, which are generally not considered to be that superior or superior in terms of education quality as compared to the European and the US system of education, also has around 25 to 30 institutes in the top 100 QS ranking, whereas India has none. So some amount of blame for this was also given on the research output of the institutes, because research is a prime criteria in this kind of rankings. So that was the need of the UGC Care list. The second need for the UGC Care was that the number of the it is somewhat linked to the first one. The again the fact is that the number of the articles that are published in the reputed journals are generally considered as a indicator of the academic output or the academic research output, because there is no other means to measure it, right? Because there is no other different kinds of means to measure it. So the only possible means to measure the academic output or the academic research output is by the number of quality publications that the institute publishes or that the institute has, and in terms and in turn the nation has, right? So that is why it is important to have this kind of a white list. And I already told about the problem of the priority journals, which have become very rampant, especially in the Indian system. So that was the another necessary. So these were some of the reasons and this why the UGC care list is needed and why it was initially set up. So now, what is the scope of the UGC care list? So the scope of the UGC care list is that basically the UGC care list is a white list, as I already told you, and it contains all the domains. It contains from arts, humanities, languages, engineering, technology. Everything is listed here. So as I go on, I will tell you. I will tell you that, and I will explain you that the UGC care has two different lists. Okay, yeah, one is called as the Group 1, and one is called as the Group 2. So what are these? We'll see in a while. So now let us look at what is the organization of the UGC care and how does it make this kind of decisions, because that is also important to understand the flaws in the system that it already has. again, it is my personal opinion that the UGC care list that is right now is not free from flaws. Okay, it has a number of flaws, but some of these flaws are because of the inherent hierarchy of the UGC that it uses. So right now, the organization of the UGC care is somewhat on a three-tier level, and what you see here is that they have something called the UGC care empowered committee. So it contains a group of, I think, around 10 to 12 people who are very renowned researchers, or who are very renowned personal academicians from the Indian academics. They are generally the VCs of very high-ranking state government or central government institutes, and as well as a couple of IS officers, as well as some undersecretary from the education department. So these 10 to 12 people are the empowered committee, or which they like to call as the UGC Care EC. And then there is something called the UGC Care Council members. So the council members are not people, but they are the organizations like AICT, organizations like there are different kinds of organizations which takes care of the, for example, AICT takes care of the engineering education in India, and there are different kinds of other organizations which take care of the medical rankings and the medical accreditation in India. All these kind of institutes are in the UGC Care member. Okay, so these institutes are the UGC Council members, and then there comes something called the UGC Care Universities. So the initially, right now, there are only 4 UGC Care Universities, and these are the JNU, which is in Delhi. We have the MS Baroda University, MS University in Baroda. We have the University of Hyderabad, as well as the Tezpur University in Assam. So all these 4 universities were selected on the basis of geographic location, as well as based on the fact that all of them are central universities, and they were tasked with to manage the education scenario in the particular sub-region. For example, if you look at Tezpur University, it looks at the education scenario. It coordinates the data, or it collects the data from the education institute that are basically in the 7 Northeast sisters, as well as West Bengal, and states like Bihar and Jharkhand. And similarly, it has been the entire geography of the Indian education geography has been divided into 4 parts, and this particular 4 universities manage it. So again, there is one more university called the SSPU uh, in Pune, that is acting as the nodal center for the, that is another university which is not listed here. It is not a UGC Care University, but it is kind of acting as the nodal center which coordinates all with all these different kinds of uh, uh, universities, or these 4 different universities, in collecting all the data, compiling it, and listing the UGC Care. So right now, as far as I know, the UGC Care team, or the UGC Care department, or the whatever may you call it, or the UGC Care cell, that is right now operating out of the SSPU University in Pune. So yeah, that is called the UGC cell, SSPU. So they are the list, they are the members that are there in Savitabhai Phule Pune Institute. It is again a central institute, and they are responsible for updating and updating and like uploading the updated list to the website of the UGC Care. So, and there is another organization called the Inflibin. You may have heard of this institute, because this is a very old institute, or this is a very old center, in this sense that as far as I know, it is almost 20 years old center. So it is in Gandhinagar, and the main agency and the main objective of this agency was that at one point of time, what was happening was that India was just starting to produce PhDs, and there was no means to, like look at all the different kind of uh, PhD theses that were published by different institutes or different universities in India. So they came up with a center called the InfluBeamNet Center, where it coordinates with all the signatory universities, and these universities deposit their. Initially, they started with the PhD. So initially, they started to deposit their PhD thesis there in their online database, and now it has also started archiving the MTech and the MS thesis and all that. So if you go to this website, they maintain a website called the Sot Ganga. So if you go to that website, you can find all the Indian theses that have been published by Indian researchers, and you can read them for free in this particular website. Again, here I should tell you the caveat is that certain universities are there which are not signatory of the, because right now it is not compulsory in the Indian scenario to be a signatory of InfluBinNet, and only certain institutes, though the membership is around 200 to 250 universities in India. I may be wrong because I checked the website, I think at least 6 months back. So at that time, I found it around 200 to 250 universities are signatories of, or 200 to 250 institutes are signatory of this InfluBIM Center. Right now, that number may have increased, but you can find all kind of theses there, or all kind of masters as well as PhD thesis there, and they are free to read. You can freely download them and you can read them. Now, what you have to understand is that the UGC care list is dynamic. What I mean by this is that it constantly is being updated. So generally, they claim that the list is updated on the first day of the uh, January, April, July, and October. So it is updated quarterly. And as I already told you, we have two different kinds of list within the UGC care list. One is called as the Group 1 and one is called as the Group 2. So, what are the two different lists that they have? Let me first tell you about the Group 2. So I've already told you about the SCI database and the SSCI database and the AHCI, that is the Arts and Humanities Citation Index database. So all these databases are maintained by an organization called the Clarivate Analytics, and I already told that these particular three databases are considered to be the most reputed databases in the world. So all the papers that are all the journals that are listed in these three particular databases, that is the SCIE, that is the SSCI, and the AHCI, are directly included in the UGC care list group 2. Okay, and there is another organization that I already mentioned you, that is the Scopus. So the Scopus database, the journals which are listed in the Scopus database are also listed in the UGC care group 2. But here the caveat is that there are certain journals in the Scopus database which are predatory in nature, or which do not have very sound peer review, or which may be in some kind of sense they may have some questionable ethics. So these journals are not listed in the UGC care group 2, okay, or UGC care group list 2. So what you have to understand here is that all the journals, as far as of today, and generally it has not happened so far, that all the journals which are listed in the Web of Science database, by Web of Science I mean the SCIE, SSCI, and the AHCI, are directly listed in the group 2. And till now, in the last couple of years from which the UGC has started publishing the list, no journal which have been indexed in these three websites have been dropped so far. But recently, I think only 2-3 months back, in the latest list, I think in the October list, we found that around, or in the January list, I might be wrong. So in the latest list, we found that around 144 journals from the, somewhere around 144 or somewhere around 79. I'm again mixing it up. So somewhere around, let us say it is somewhere around 100. So somewhere around 100 journals which are in the Scopus database are dropped by the UGC from the UGC care group 2. Okay, so you have to be a little careful when you are publishing with Scopus journals. So again, I will tell you some tricks by which you can identify that which Scopus journals you have to choose, so that they will be continuously listed in the UGC care group 2, okay, or UGC care group 2. They will be continuously listed, but that problem is not there with the SSCI or the SCIE and the ASCI, because they maintain their quality standards. Now let us understand about the UGC group 1 journals. So what happens in this particular group is that this group is more dynamic as compared to the second group. Okay, this is first thing that you have to understand. Okay, so my personal recommendation would be that it is more safe to publish in group 2 journals as compared to group 1 journals. Okay, again, another important fact that I should maintain here, or another state here, is that these two groups that are there, they may be ranked as group 1 and group 2, but they are not hierarchical, or they are not ranked. Okay, so it doesn't mean group 1 is better than group 2, or it doesn't mean group 2 is better than group 1. They have just made two different groups based on their operational complexity, or based on the kind of analysis that they are doing. Okay, because group 2 journals, for group 2 journals, uh, the cell for general analysis, or the UGC, doesn't does any analysis. Mean it doesn't do any analysis. All the journals that are directly listed in this four databases that I mentioned, the SCIE, the SSCI, the AHCI, and the Scopus, are directly listed in the group 2. Okay, then you may ask that why then some of the journals which are listed in the Scopus are being dropped. So these particular journals which are listed in the Scopus, they are dropped based on the feedback and based on the complaints of the researchers from the Indian scenario, or maybe from the others also. So they are dropped based on the feedback, and they are based on the they are dropped based on the complaints that have been raised by the researchers. Okay, so the group 1 journals, what you have to understand about the group 1 journals is that I already mentioned that the group 1 journals are more dynamic, means they are more prone to changes. So we have to first understand that what is the group 1 journal, and how does a particular journal gets its listing in the group 1. So what happens is that, suppose say you are a you have a particular journal which you want to refer to the UGC Care, but you see that this particular journal right now is not covered in the Scopus, or it is not covered in the SCI or the SSCI or the AHCI. Okay, it is not covered in these four databases, but you want to recommend to the UGC Care that please index this, or please list this particular journal also in the UGC Care. So now, since it is not listed in these four top indexes, so it is not eligible for group 2. It is eligible only for group 1. Okay, so the typical process of the group 1 is that you have to first submit the name and the basic details of the journal. But how you can do that? You can do it if you are a publisher, you can do it, or if you are an individual, means you do not have any interest in it, you do not have any vested interest in the invested interest in the journal. You are just mentioning, or you are just recommending that journal out of just plain just because you think that that particular journal is worthy. Okay, so there can be two different kinds of nominations. So the first nomination is by the publisher, and the second nomination is by individual researchers like us. Okay, so both of them can nominate. So in the nomination process, what they have to give is that they have to give something called the protocol 1. So in the protocol 1, they have to give basic information regarding that what is the name of the journal, what is the ISBN of the journal, what is the frequency of the journal, who is the editorial board of the journal, where is the editorial office of the journal. So like this kind of 10 to 12 questions are there, very basic kind of questions, very straightforward kind of questions, like whether it is peer reviewed or not, whether it has DOI or not. This kind of very basic questions are there, and if you answer all these kind of basic questions, you can fill a form and you can submit it to your college or your university. Okay, so any college or university, wherever you are studying or wherever you are working, you may submit the recommendation list to the internal cell of that particular college or university. Okay, so now that particular recommendation that you have given, by you I mean whether it may be an individual researcher or it may be a publisher, that will now be validated by the faculty members. That should be validated by the faculty members, and that should be endorsed by the at least one faculty member, in the sense that one of the faculty members should forward it to the UGC Care University. I already told you about the UGC Care Universities. So I told you about this kind of four universities which are acting as the regional centers for the UGC Care. Suppose say your particular university is based in Karnataka, where you are working, that particular university is based in Karnataka. So you forward the recommendation of that particular journal to your institute, which is based in Karnataka. So what they will do is that your one of the faculty members from your institute will recommend it to the University of Hyderabad, to the quality assurance cell in the University of Hyderabad. So that is the UGC nodal center or UGC regional center there. So they will analyze the journal, or they will analyze the your recommendation based on something called the protocol 2. Again, I will discuss what is protocol 2, but let's now go with this, that they will evaluate it as per protocol 2. So if they find that it doesn't match, or it doesn't fulfill all the criteria in the protocol 2, then they will not further recommend it. But if they find that it maintains or it has validated all the regulations that are there in the protocol 2, they will then forward it to the nodal center in Pune, the SSPU Pune. So they'll forward it there. So there it will go a secondary criteria check, which is the protocol 3. Okay, this is done only by the journal for the Center for Journal Analysis in SSPU Pune. Okay, only this particular university has the authority to do this protocol 3 analysis. So after the protocol 3 analysis, if it passes this protocol 3 analysis also, then it is forwarded to the UGC empowered committee that I mentioned. It is a group of 10 to 12 renowned academicians from India. And then if depending on whether they generally, I am not involved in that process, and I do not know what could be the possible outcome, whether and it is not available in the officially also, whether certain journals uh, can be not recommended in the final step also. That is that particular measure is not clear, that is not clearly mentioned in the website. So we're assuming that all the journals or all the recommendations that pass the protocol 3 will be approved by the empowered committee, and then they will finally appear in the UC care list. Okay, so now uh, what I told is that the UC care list group 1 is a little dynamic, or it is a little fluctuating as compared to the group 2. Means you will find a lot of changes that are happening in the group 1. uh, New journals are being added, certain journals are being dropped in from the group 1. Why is that? The reason for that is, I will show you the reason for that. What I believe the problem is, I'll just show you the reason why that is there. You go to the website of the UC Care. So here you can do something called a login to look at all the resources. You can do something called a login. Again, this registration is free, so you can just log in. So let me log in so that I have access to all the data that they are providing. So here, let me look at something called the analysis protocols. Now, let me look at the analysis protocol or the basic protocol 1. So as I told, there are 10 different kind of questions that you have to give in the protocol 1 that are very straightforward, like who is the editorial, who is the editorial board member, where is the address and all that. So that is very basic, straightforward. Okay, that is very well defined. But when you look at the regulations that are mentioned in the website, you will find that part 2 and part 3 of the protocol are used for internal analysis and assessment purposes, which includes due diligence, verification process, critical appraisal using sequential algorithmic elimination process, and weight-based metrics on a scale of 10. Okay. So, and if you read the next paragraph also, so there they have given a very vague kind of, what I feel is a very vague kind of methodology for ranking and both accepting as well as rejecting journals. Okay, because it is not clear that who constitutes the uh, member in the part 2, in the part 2 protocol and the part 3 protocol. Are these active researchers, are these clerical staff, or are these regular staff? So the, if suppose say there's a there's a phrase here called the critical appraisal using sequential algorithmic elimination process. Okay, again, this is something that is not clear, that is not clearly mentioned, and what is the algorithm and how it is done, it is not mentioned. Again, when we use words like critical appraisal, it basically means that the person who is evaluating this is supposed to be an expert. Okay, and so what will happen is that if we do not have very objective kind of analysis to in this, or objective kind of method here. For example, in the part 1 you see that that is very objective in the sense that they are very straightforward answers which you have to provide. In the stage 2 and the stage 3 protocol, that is the part 2 protocol and the part 3 protocol, the questions are very vague in the sense that there is, what could be the definition of diligence, due diligence. The definition of due diligence can be different from person to person. The critical appraisal of can be different from person to person. If suppose a regular staff is doing the critical appraisal process, who is not well versed with the research or the type of research that is there, So his appraisal may be different. Okay, he may see very colorful kind of pictures, or he may see very good kind of formatting and layout. He may think that this journal is good enough. Whereas if suppose say a seasoned researcher is there to make this assessment, then he can make some better judgment regarding the quality of the journal, or regarding the quality of the articles that are published in that journal. So that is why this is my personal opinion, and this is why I feel that the UGC Care List 1 is still kind of vague, in the sense that, or it is still has so much discrepancy in the sense that, because the stage 2 protocol and the stage 3 protocol are not very clearly defined. Okay, they are not very objectively defined, and that is why there might be a lot of mistakes or abuse in the system. For example, even if you see, I found a lot of mistakes even in the website also, in the website of the UC Care List also. Maybe that is something that they will remove in the in the future iterations. Okay, so what my personal recommendation as a researcher would be that right now, the again, this is based on my personal recommendation, and it might not be something that you share. Your My opinions need not be the final opinion. This is just a personal opinion. What I feel is that the UC Care List, especially the uh, Group 1 list, is not a mature list. What I mean by this is that it is still a very dynamic list. Any list, for example, if you look at even the SCI list or even the Scopus list, every year from those lists also a lot of journals are added, and a lot of journals are uh, upgraded, and a lot of journals are downgraded. Okay, but the process that is there, or the number of the iterations that they do, and the number of the iterations that the UC Care list group 1 is doing right now, there's a vast difference between them. For example, uh, the UC Care has already mentioned that they are analyzing this uh, list every quarter, right? They're analyzing this every quarter. But if you look at the SCI, they are analyzing this list, they are publishing the updated list every once in every year. And as far as I know, Scopus is doing that twice in a year. Okay, so you see that if they are analyzing it so frequently, and if they are dropping so many journals from this list, or they are adding new journals to this list, what will happen is that, suppose say you are a researcher and you have published in a particular journal, and right now when you are publishing the journal, suppose say in the month of May you are publishing your article in a journal, and right now it is in the UC Care List. Okay, and we know that in the month of July a new list is going to come. Suppose say what happens is that in the upcoming list in the July, that particular journal where you have published is not listed in the UC Care, then your entire effort will go to waste, because now that article will not be recognized. Okay, so that is the main complaint I have about the UC Group 1 list, right? So the process is still not in a very mature stage. So that is why my personal recommendation is, if you are going to look at the UC list, rather go for UC Group 2 list rather than the UC Group 1. Maybe in another 2 to 3 years, the UC list will be very mature, and this kind of frequent addings and droppings of the upgrading and downgrading of the journals will not occur. But right now, the addition and the deletion in the, especially in the group 1, is too frequent, because of which the reliability is, what I believe, the reliability is lacking in the system. Again, to make matter worse, there are certain queries that any average kind, any typical researcher will have. So some of these queries are, for example, what would be the status of research articles published before the UGC Care List? Okay, so we know that initially, all of us know that initially the UGC published a list called the UGC approved list of journals. Okay, now that list is defunct, or that list is no longer valid. But still, if you look at the UGC's main website, that list is still there in their website. They claim it that it is there for reference purposes, but a lot of researchers who may not be aware about the entire scenario, they may believe that that is the recommended list of journals. Okay, because that list of journals is still there in the website of the UGC. Okay, so it is still by the name of UGC recommended list of journals. But as of current date, as of the circular of 14 June 2019, that list is no longer valid, and you should not refer to that list, but you should refer to the UGC care list. Okay, so now what will happen to all those papers or all those research papers published by the authors or the researchers which are published in journals which are not listed in the UGC care list, or which are published before the UGC care list was constituted. So there is a public notification for this clause, and let us go and look at the public notification. So in the public notification, generally in the website they have mentioned that we should look at point 2 and 3. Again, if you look at the uh, uh, public circular, by looking at the point 2 and 3, it is not very clear what the UC means to say. But overall, what you can understand from the circular is that these these papers which have been published in journals which are published even before the UC care list was constituted, and right now, if those journals are not listed in the UC care, then these papers will not be recognized for academic and promotional purposes. Okay, they will not be recognized. Okay, even if they were published before the UGC care list. Okay. So that is the first kind of question I think most of you will have, and that is the answer to that. So now, what can you do as a researcher to weed out these sub-quality journals from the UGC care list? I have provided the link here for the feedback. So if you click on this feedback here, you will go to a website, to its own website. For the example, the SSPU website, and here you can give your basic details like your name, your phone number, and your address and all that. And then based on this, you can this is basically the grievance cell or the complaint cell, where you can complain about uh, different kind of journals which are already listed in the UGC care, but they are not following certain standards or they are not up to the mark. So you can do your part by giving proper feedback on those journals so that they are immediately, as soon as possible, they are delisted from the university, from the UGC care. Again, another question from the participants may be that if a particular researcher has published a research paper in a journal which is indexed in Scopus, okay, but it has removed from the UC care list, will it be considered for promotion and academic purposes? Again, the answer to that is in the same public notification that I showed you, though it is not there in a very clear way, but it means that uh, if you refer to the point 2 and 3, it means that they will not be considered. Okay, even if your paper is in Scopus, but it is in one of those journals which is not there in the UGC group 2 or group 1, then it will not be considered for promotion or academic purposes. Okay, again, it is not very clear whether the date when you are applying for the job, that will be taken as the cutoff date, or the date of the interview will be taken as the cutoff date for the UC care list. Because again, as I told you, the UC care list is very dynamic. In the Indian scenario, what happens is that there may be as much as 6 months to 1 year difference between the date of application and the date of uh, interview appearing. Okay, so that is also not very specifically mentioned whether the which date is the cutoff date, means which date, on which date it will be considered, the UC care list of which date will be considered. But as far as I can tell you from the different public notifications and the uh, interview of the VC or the vice chairman of the UEC, I can tell you that this generally the most active or the most recent UEC care list will be taken into consideration in all kinds of promotion and academic purposes. So that is why you should be extra careful while selecting journals which are listed in the UEC care, especially those journals which are listed in the UEC care group 1, because here the changes will be a lot as compared to group 2. Again, there are certain interesting websites that I wanted to mention. For example, there is a particular website called the Scholarly OA. So in the Scholarly OA, you can find, it is basically a kind of a blog site. So here you can find a lot of articles on uh, good publishing behavior or good publishing methodology, as well as what are predatory journals and all that. So there are different kinds of blogs and different kinds of interviews of the researchers that are published in this particular website. Maybe you can find some time to go through this website, and you will find it interesting. Again, there is another website. Again, this particular website that I am listing here, or this I'm sharing with you, this doesn't have anything to do with the UC care list or the indexing as such. This I'm just suggesting you so that you can also benefit from this particular website, as I have benefited from them, because all of these websites are unique in their own way, and they give some kind of unique information to the average researcher or to the researchers, right? So the second website that I wanted to mention to all the participants is the retractionwatch.com. Again, before knowing about this website, you have to understand what is retraction. Retraction is basically when you publish an article, it is published by the journal, but after publication, the journal or the editorial board or the journal authorities, they find out that some kind of abuse of the system was done. The abuse may be in form of plagiarism. Maybe you have copied from someone, or maybe there are some certain items which are plagiarized, and the this plagiarism was not caught in the initial review stage. So, if it is later established that the plagiarism has been done, then even a published article can be removed by the journal. Okay, and this process of removing a published article by the journal or by the editorial board is called retraction. Okay, so retraction in generally is a very shameful activity for any researcher. So generally we should be very cautious about not doing this kind of mistakes, so that our paper may get retracted. So there is this particular website called the retractionwatch.com. So the retractionwatch.com is like a watchdog for the scientific community, where it constantly monitors the different kinds of papers that are published in journals, and it lists out, sometimes it does stories on the retracted papers. Sometimes what it does is that it recommends papers for retraction based on if they find some abuse or if they find some misuse of certain scientific data or certain scientific ethics, then they recommend the retraction of articles to the journals. Okay, so what could be the other reasons for retraction? The other reasons for the retraction could be maybe you have used someone else's data and you have not given him the proper citation. So that could be another reason for retraction. There might be another reason might be that you have manipulated the images, or maybe you have given false information. So, or maybe you have falsified the peer review. So based on all these tasks, or based on all this kind of breach of research ethics, the retractions are done. And you can go and read about the research retractionwatch.com. There are a number of interesting articles there. For example, I recently found out, about 6 months back, I found out that last to last year, China was the country which faced the most number of retractions, and India was the second country in terms of volume of papers retracted. So we were the second in terms of volume of papers retracted. So we have, so even in the premier institutes like the CSI labs, ISC Bangalore, even IIT Kanpur, even ISM Dhanbad, as well as institutes like BHU, all of them has faced retractions. Okay, so because in most of the cases they have done something called the image manipulation. So again, that is something you can learn from others mistakes. So what you should do is that you should go and read some articles or read some blogs in this particular website, so that you know what are the common kinds of abuses that goes on in this kind of publication scenario. Then there is this another website called the Let's or letpub.com. So this is a very interesting website in the sense that a lot of you have, as initial researchers or early career researchers, a lot of you have questions like where we should publish our research paper. Okay, especially when you are targeting SCI journals. So this particular website is specifically valid only for SCI journals. Again, what I should tell you is that this LetPub is a for-profit organization. It is not a non-profit organization. It is a for-profit organization. So generally, it gives services like language editing and all that. So I'm not endorsing that in that, but they maintain a very beautiful tool here. That tool is called the, let me show you, the Journal Selector tool. Okay. So I refer to this website only for this tool. So if suppose say you are from, you can go here and suppose say you want to look at the SCIE list. Okay, and this particular list is, or this particular website is valid only for searching the SCI and SCI list. And suppose say you are from like me, you are from engineering background, and you are looking for certain journals in the engineering background, okay, where you want to publish. So you can just do a search here, and the best information that I like about this particular journal is that it lists the information about different kinds of journals, in the sense that, for example, this is a journal called Journal of Manufacturing. So it lists the impact factor, it lists in which category it is, it lists the index in which, though this might be updated because right now we do not have anything called the SCI and SCI are merged from 2019, and they give you information like whether it is open access or not. And here, this is why I like this website, though this may not be 100% accurate, but it is, I have found this to be 70 to 80% accurate, in the fact that the competitiveness, basically what they mean by this is that how many what is the level of what is the level of competition that goes in publishing in this particular journal. So if it says easy, so it means relatively publishing in this journal should be easy as compared to some other journals. And here they have, this is another important feature that they have mentioned in this particular website, is the kind of peer review and the amount of time. Again, this information that is here, that is based on their own internal analysis, and this need not be entirely true, but from my personal experience, I found this to be 75% to 80% accurate, depending on different kinds of journals. So if they mention here that the review is ordinary, so it means it is a very slow kind of, or it is a very average kind of review, where they take somewhere between 1 to 2 months to review. And for example, in journals like in another journal called Dyna, they have listed that the review period is very slow and it takes 6 to 12 weeks. Okay? So even in the question hour session today, someone asked this question, that why some journals are taking a lot of time to publish the articles. So the reasons could be varied. Maybe they do not have a proper uh, they do not have a proper system layout, or they may not have access to that many reviewers, or their editorial board may not be that dynamic. So there may be different kinds of reasons for which they are slow. But if you look at this particular website, you get the information regarding what could be the average review time that you are going to face if you are going to send a paper to any of the journals that is listed here. So in that sense, you can use this website. Then there is this another website that I already mentioned. This is the sotganga.inflibin.net.ac.in. It is a government website maintained by the Gandhinagar, maintained in the Gandhinagar by the Inflibin Center. So here, as I already mentioned, you can find all the PhD as well as the MTech thesis that are published by Indian researchers. And there is this another website called keepcalmandpublishpapers.com. So here, generally this website is valid for mainly from the engineering background. So here you find a lot of diverse kind of information, ranging from if you are submitting to, suppose say, a particular journal, what is the artwork guideline, and what are the different kinds of tools that you can use, or how can you. So there generally they carry different kinds of blogs, like for example, here is this interesting blog like how to combine different SEM images and all that. So there are different kinds of articles like how to convert uh, uh, a scientific graph which is in color to grayscale and all that. So this kind of interesting publication related information you can find in this particular website. But again, I should mention here that this particular website is specifically for materials in the engineering background. And then the most interesting website of this all is the data.gov.in. This is again a recent addition by the Indian government. So here, what the Indian government is doing is that they are publishing all kind of data that the Indian different kinds of institutes in India collect. Okay, so we all know that there are different kinds of institutes in India, ranging from the meteorological institutes to the statistical institutes to the RBI to the uh, Archaeological Survey of India. So this is an official government website maintained by the government of India called the data.gov.in. So here you can find all kinds of data that are published, or that are gathered by the government for different kinds of features. For example, here you find here you can find information about drinking and sanitation data set. So all this data set may be useful in your research. For example, suppose say you are a social science researcher who is working on some kind of study on how the sanitation affects the model of the citizens. Okay, so maybe you can find some suitable data set related to that here. Maybe suppose say you are someone from the transportation engineering, so you can find a lot of data from the transport here, from the health sector, from the labor and all that. Okay, so this website again I found it to be very useful in the sense that it gives a lot of it has a lot of data here. Okay, it is a treasure trove of all the data that the Indian government has collected for the last 10-15 years. So there are somewhere around, as it mentions here, there are somewhere around 4 lakh resources here. So maybe you can also look at this particular website and you can see whether this data that this particular website contains can be of any benefit to you in terms of publications. Maybe you can use this data and you can analyze on this data and you can find out some interesting features or interesting facts about the field that you are researching in. This is the last slide where I would like to tell you all about some interesting journals that I have seen uh, over my period of the research in the last 4 or 5 years. So I found this particular journals to be very interesting in the sense that all of them are revolutionary in some kind of sense. For example, you may have heard about the regular kind of journals, the subscription journal and the open access journal, but I want to introduce you something called the mega journals. So what are these mega journals? So what are these mega journals? Mega journals are basically like any other regular journal, but they are generally open access journal, means the articles that are published in journals are freely accessible to all for reading, and they are mega in the sense that they publish a lot of articles in a year. For example, if you have heard about this particular journal called the PLOS One, if you have heard about this particular journal called the PLOS One, so when PLOS One was published, I think in 2005 or 2007, the PLOS One started. So it was the first mega journal that was started, and in its initial year, it published somewhere around 18,000 articles. And right now, the world's biggest journal or the world's biggest mega journal is the Scientific Reports, which publishes around somewhere around 20 to 25,000 papers per year. Okay, so you see the volume of the, you can just imagine the volume of the articles that they are publishing. By the way, I should tell you that bearing only a couple of journals which are listed here, all the other journals that are listed here are in the SCIE database, and most of them has very good impact factor in the sense that they all have impact factors ranging somewhere around 2.5 to 3. Okay, and you have to understand that all these journals that I've listed here are interdisciplinary. So it means most of the journals that I've listed here are interdisciplinary. So it means anyone from biology can also submit here, anyone from humanities can also submit here, anyone from engineering can also submit here. So anyone can submit here. Okay, bearing some of the journals, for example, the ACS Omega. So the ACS Omega is the American Chemical Society. So all people from different fields of chemistry can submit here. There may be some journal called the IEEE Access, which is basically again related to the uh, IT and the electronics background. So bearing this, most of the journals like the PLOS One, Scientific Reports, Sage Open, and all this PRJ, so they are generally mega journals in the sense that they are interdisciplinary journals which a lot of output per year. So maybe you can try publishing in this particular journals specifically because the what I have found is that the review process in most of them are very good, and the review process in most of them are very objective. Okay, so we all know now, if you have submitted to some of the SCI journals and if you have got any rejections, so there might be one particular comment that might have bothered you, is that uh, lack of novelty. Lack of novelty is a popular statement that often research or often peer reviewers make in SCI journals and when the papers are rejected, right? So this kind of problem you will not face in these particular journals because the website of all these particular journals, they mention that the articles are published in these journals regardless of the novelty. They are published only on the basis of the sound science or the sound technicality. Okay, they are not published on the basis of perceived novelty, which is generally in case of most reputed journals, right? And again, there is some other journal called the F1000. So F1000 is also a revolutionary journal in the sense that Now it goes by the name of, if I'm not mistaken, it goes by the name of F1000 Research and F1000 Prime. So F1000 is also a revolutionary journal in the sense that here, basically it's not a journal, rather it's a platform, but you can also consider it as a journal in the sense that here, suppose say if you want to send a paper, you send a paper, then it has an article processing fee, and it would be the article that you are sending would be published in your website after 4 to 5 days of the entire process, and then the peer review will go on after that. Means first the article will be published in their website, and after that the peer reviews will be invited, and the peer reviews will be open in the sense that all the comments that the reviewer makes on the article will be published along with the article. Okay, and the comments, the reply to the comments that you make, that will also be published in the website. And if a particular journal or if a particular article uh, yeah, is is validated by the peer review process, or if it is cleared by the peer review process, then it is indexed in the Scopus database. And if it is not cleared by the peer review process, then it is not indexed in the Scopus database, but it maintains on their website. Okay, so this particular journal is also unique in that way. Though they claim that they are not a journal, they are a platform, but you can find a number of papers which are from the F1000, which are approved by the peer review. They appear in the Scopus database. Again, we have a similar kind of journal called the Curas, which is again for the medicine background. And there are some very specific journals, for example, the data journals. So here you can find only information regarding the data sets. Okay, so most of these journals are open access, and they are gold open access in the sense that any data which is being published in these particular journals are free to use by other researchers. For example, if suppose say there is a particular data set here on, suppose say, the meteorological data of some place, I can use that data in my research, provided that I just give a citation to this data that is there in this particular websites, or in this particular papers. Okay, so this data that are published in these three journals are free to use by other researchers, and they generally contain only the data and not the analysis. Okay, they are just the data journals, means they have only the data sets there, so you can use those data sets in your own research by giving proper citation to them. Okay. And there is also something called the methodology journals, for example the Method X and the Software X, that focuses only on the methodology. If you read the papers from Method X, or if you read the papers from Software X, you'll find that there are no results, there are no conclusions, there are only the methods are there. Means suppose say you are working on some field, and you have made some changes to the existing method, or you have devised some new method, then your methodology can be published here regardless of whether it works or doesn't work. Okay, so that can be published here. Similarly, similar goes for the Software X also. Here the software developments are published here, and generally they do not have any conclusion, in the sense that they do not have any um, analysis carried on, but they list different kinds of softwares. And why you should refer to this particular journal called the Software is because most of the softwares that are generally the information that is published about these softwares are also generally freely available. Links are given to the freely available uh, sites where you can get the different kinds of versions that are published in the Software X. So all these journals are interesting in their own way, and you can gain a lot of them from these journals in different ways. So that is why I felt that I should mention all these journals. So I hope that this session was interesting. You found out a lot of new information in this session, and I hope that some of the recommendations that I've made in this session, as well as some of the tools and some of the interesting websites that I've shared in this your upcoming research. Thank you for your time.